Hey guys, welcome to a weekly story time. If you like these story time videos, definitely like this video. Subscribe if you're not already and leave a comment. All of those things really do help out the channel. And if you want to support what we're doing even further, get bonus content, dive deeper into the topic of domestic discipline, the best place to do that is over on Patreon. So I'm going to leave a link to our Patreon down below if you're interested. On this week's story time, I'm going to be talking about my most recent punishment. Just when I didn't think that Coda could spank any harder, he surprised me and definitely delivered. I ended up being pretty disrespectful. In hindsight, I was extremely disrespectful, and so I had earned a punishment. I was not prepared. Even when you know what to expect, you're not really prepared. And so we get to the point of the day where the punishment's going to happen. And, there wasn't much of a lecture because we had kind of talked extensively about what had happened, the situation, what was expected. But he did, give me a lecture and very sternly tell me that I would never be allowed to speak to him the way I spoke to him. And that, it was completely unacceptable, which it absolutely was. And so he gave me that lecture, and then we started the punishment. I was completely taken back. Like I said, you're never prepared going in, but it was like the first contact of that paddle just took my breath away. It was so much. Coda definitely made sure that he did not go light. He was definitely making a point, and as he should. My behavior was appalling, to be completely honest. I should have never spoken to him that way. That was really the crux of the issue, is that I spoke to him completely inappropriately. And so he wanted to make sure that I learned my lesson. And so he, the way we're doing punishments now is that we use like the zone system where we have the 4 zones. That's not new, but he just was doing a minute in each zone. We cut the time down, but he increased his speed of delivery, and he increased the intensity, and so it was a lot to take. And he was making sure that he was very thorough in the coverage, so he was covering the entire area, and he even made sure that he was distributing the force in enough of a surface area that he wasn't causing any undue damage to any spot. And so that just meant that there were a lot of areas that he spanked during this particular punishment that he doesn't typically. And what I mean by that is more of the side where it's almost my hip. It's not my hip, it's still my bottom, but it's almost my hip. And so that's just an area that doesn't get spanked a whole lot. And so that felt really intense. And then he, the zones are, to include my upper thighs. And so he, that is always very intense. So we get through the zones, and I am just I'm regretting all of my life choices. I have completely broken to the process at this point. I am just so apologetic, so just so yielded to the process. But it's not over, because it wouldn't be over at that point. And so the next step to our punishment is that he went to the cane. And we used to have a system where he would count the cane strokes. That is not the case anymore. We went to a completely timed system now. And so it was a minute on each side with the cane, so 2 minutes total with the cane. And that was very intense. And honestly, it was really hard to take. It was something that he again, just did not hold back. He wanted to make sure that he was making a point. And so he did the cane for 1 minute on my left side, and it was just like the burning sensation of a cane. It's a lot to take. And I thought that was like going to be so terrible. But then he moved to my left side, and my left side was equally as terrible, if not more terrible. And so when he was done with the cane, I was just like, my whole like bottom just felt like it was just on fire. It really was just like terrible, but it wasn't over, because of course it wasn't. And so he then moved on to the loop. And again, we are on a completely timed system now. So it was a minute on each side with the loop. And so he started on my left side, and oh my goodness, like the loop is worse than the cane, in my opinion. We have a braided loop. I don't know if that makes a difference, probably, just because the contact surface is so different. And so he actually goes harder with the loop than he does the cane. I think mostly because he knows like that he can, without causing any undue damage to my skin. And he is very careful to make sure that he is accurate in his delivery. He's very careful to make sure that he is having even coverage, so he's not hitting the same spot over and over again. He is making sure that he moves it around to where it will evenly distribute the force that I'm feeling. But it was terrible. It was so awful. I was like, it was so hard to take. Did I deserve every single bit of it? Yes, absolutely I did. My behavior was way over the top, so it made sense that this punishment was way over the top. It was well beyond my limits. It was well beyond what I could handle, but it was well within what I deserved, and it was well within what was safe. And so Coda was keeping me safe, and I can trust him to keep me safe throughout this entire process. I can trust him to keep me safe when he is disciplining me. And so I didn't feel unsafe. I didn't feel uncared for. In fact, I felt very cared for throughout the whole process, but he was very stoic. He does not talk during my spankings anymore at all. He used to. That's something that he stopped doing because it was something that he saw as being detrimental to the process. So he does not talk at all. He finished the loop on the left side. Now I am a sobbing mess. I am absolutely regretting how I spoke to him. I'm regretting thinking that was ever okay, and realizing how not okay it really was. And he moved to my right side and repeated the process, did a minute with the loop on that side. It was so intense. Because he was just going really hard with the loop. He, again, increased his pacing, and so he goes so fast. He, within a minute, he delivers around 100 strokes. So 2 minutes of the cane is like 200 strokes of the cane. 2 minutes with the loop is like 200 strokes with the loop. And so on the left side, he was delivering the loop on that side. There was one point where he, because he usually comes from the side, like he comes down from the side, and there was one point where he stood behind me and was coming like straight down with the loop, and it just felt really terrible. By the time he was done with the loop, I was just beside myself. I felt so sore. I felt so, just so completely, thoroughly punished at that point, but he wasn't done. Now this is brand new to our punishment system. We've never done this before, where now at the end of that process, the paddle cane loop, he goes back to the paddle. and he does a minute on each side with the paddle. And this last round of a minute on each side, he does full force swats with the paddle. And so he goes in pretty much as hard as he feels is safe, to just drive home the point and purpose of punishment. And he makes sure that, like, throughout this last minute, he made sure that every single part of my bottom that was safe to spank was covered, from the top, from, my upper thigh to my bottom was completely covered with the paddle at that point. Again, he's going so fast and so hard, and it just is driving home that point, putting an exclamation point on the process. And he finished on my right side, moved to my left side, did the left side. It felt completely unbearable at this point. I was completely yielded to the process. I was so ready to be done, but not only just to be done with the punishment, but I was so remorseful for what got me to that point. Like, I was so sorry for how I behaved. I was just so submissive to Coda in that moment. And so he finished the spanking. The two sides with the paddle were done. The spanking was over. So what he does is, after the spanking's over, he tells me that I can get up when I'm ready. I was not ready to get up right away. I just stayed in position and I just cried for a good few minutes. I then stood up, and I wasn't ready to go to him at that point just yet. And I stood up and I cried for another minute or two. I went and I got a tissue. I drank some water, and then we embraced, and Coda hugged me, and I just apologized, and I told him how sorry I was, that I will never speak to him that way again, that I don't know what got into me, but it was completely unacceptable, and I know that it was unacceptable, and he did not deserve that from me. Just the most sincere apology, right? And I meant every word of it. Absolutely. I still mean every word of it. I will, it is not going to be my intention to ever repeat that behavior ever again. And, part of the motivation behind that is that I don't want to repeat that punishment ever again. But more importantly, I don't want to ever make my husband feel disrespected in that way ever again. And that is really the point and purpose of going through this process, is to get to the point where I respect him and I honor him, to the point that I will never let myself go there ever again. He forgave me. He reiterated that, that this is done. He forgives me. He expects more from me, and he knows that I'm capable of doing more, and that he knows that I will do better in the future. And we just hugged. He let me cry. We went inside because we have our studio space where we do punishments, just for privacy's sake, for some separation from our house where our child is. And so we went inside and just cuddled in bed for a long time, and that was very enjoyable. I really enjoyed reconnecting with him in that way, where he just, I don't even think we talked a lot. Just the physical connection, to have his warm and gentle embrace, to know that all was right between us again, and that my mistake did not completely derail our relationship. Because in the past, when things like this would happen before domestic discipline, it would be days and days of just tension, and now that can be handled and rectified in about 15 minutes, and then we are back to a point of reconciliation in our relationship again. So Hope that you enjoyed that story time. It was a very intense punishment. It was probably the hardest punishment that I've ever received. Rightfully so, because respect is a huge, huge level of importance in our relationship, and it is probably one of the worst things that I could do is disrespect my husband. So since it's one of the worst things that I can do, it's one of the worst punishments I can receive. And so this definitely was one of the worst punishments I ever received, and I hopefully will not make that mistake anytime soon or ever again. So hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you guys next time.